Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to get into something different today.
Different,
We're
yeah.
going to be doing a deep dive into a story you might not have heard of before, um, but it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, definitely fascinating.
It's the story of Yakub. He's like the central figure in the Nation of Islam's theology.
Yeah, that's right.
But like his story, it isn't your typical creation myth.
No, not at all.
And for this deep dive, we're using these excerpts from a podcast called Strange Serenity. And they really go into some of the theological and philosophical stuff.
Mm.
So hopefully we can unpack some of that for you guys today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, so let's just start with who is this guy Yakub? I mean, people might not even know who we're talking about.
Yeah, so in the Nation of Islam, as taught by Elijah Muhammad, Yakub is this key figure.
Okay.
And he's often presented as like a scientist.
A scientist.
Yeah, and like 6,000 years ago, he actually created the white race. He's said to have done this through selective breeding.
So this isn't like Adam and Eve.
No, definitely not your typical creation story.
Okay, so I see where this is going. I'm guessing this story is like a metaphor for something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What kinds of themes are we going to see here?
Well, you'll see themes of power, identity, and just the whole idea of how social hierarchies came to be. It's like, looking at how different societies have these creator gods or deities.
Yeah.
But this story has like a really unique spin on it.
Okay, so he's like a creator, but his creation is like flawed, like from the very start.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
But-
The idea is that the creation itself from the beginning is imperfect.
Huh. That's
Yeah.
different. I guess that makes me wonder, what does this story then have to say about good and evil? Like, how does that all fit in?
That's a great question. And I think it really flips the script, right? Like in a lot of religious traditions, you have this idea of original sin, like humans are messed up because of something Adam and Eve did.
Yeah, the apple, right?
Yeah, right, right. But here, it's not about a perfect creation that goes bad. It's about a creation that's flawed from the get-go. It's baked right in.
Wow. That's a big difference. So this story is kind of messing with our usual ideas about a benevolent creator or just even like where humanity comes
It
from.
definitely raises some questions, yeah.
It really makes you think, like, does this challenge the idea of a perfect God? Or is it more
Yeah.
about, showing the potential for darkness that's maybe inside of all of us?
It really makes you think about human nature.
It does. So even though Yakub is presented as this scientist figure, I'm getting this feeling that he's more than just a regular guy in this story. He's like a symbol, right?
Definitely. I think he represents something bigger.
What kind of symbol? Like, what does he embody?
This idea of creation and disruption.
Oh, interesting.
And it's like his story gives us this framework maybe to try and make sense of things like inequality and the conflicts we see throughout history.
Okay. Yeah, I see this. So instead of putting everything on Adam and Eve or like one original sin, this story says, hey, maybe the problems we've got were built in from the start. It's like a totally different way of explaining things.
Yeah, it really shifts the perspective and it makes you think about those who have power,
Right.
and how they might try to use certain stories or ideologies to hold on to that power and keep others down.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there, that's for sure. This is definitely more than just a simple story.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Okay, so we've got Yakub the scientist and Yakub the symbol. Where do we go from here? What else should we know about this guy?
Well, let's delve into the theological themes in Yakub's story.
Okay, the theology of Yakub. I like it.
And then we'll see if we can figure out what all this symbolism might mean. What does it really say about us, about human nature?
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, so we've kind of established that Yakub's story is not exactly your run-of-the-mill creation myth. It's like more of a parable, like making us rethink all those assumptions about how everything began. But I think we should try to dig into those theological themes a little bit deeper. Like, how does this story change our thinking about creation itself?
Yeah, well, one of the most striking things in Yakub's story is this idea of it's like an inversion of the whole original sin thing.
Oh, yeah, original sin.
The traditional way we think about it.
Yeah, like it's Adam and Eve's fault. We're all messed up.
Exactly. They disobeyed in the Garden of Eden, and now we're all paying the price.
Right. But you're saying Yakub's story suggests something totally different.
Yeah, completely different.
So instead of this, fall from grace, it's more like we were, programmed for imperfection. Like right from the start.
Yeah, that's it. It flips the script. It's not about this one act of disobedience that stains all of humanity.
Right.
It's saying imperfection was actually woven into creation itself, intentionally.
Okay, that's That's a pretty radical idea. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes you think about all the inequalities and conflicts we see in the world. Is this story, like, trying to explain all that?
It's definitely a possible interpretation. I mean, you have to remember, Yakub is presented as this scientist,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he deliberately engineers this whole race of people with very specific characteristics.
He's setting the stage for, like, division and domination.
Yeah, he sets off this whole chain of events, and that's where it all leads.
It's like, it's not just about people making bad choices.
Right.
It's about the systems, the structures in place that keep those inequalities going.
Exactly. And even though Yakub's story is specific to the Nation of Islam, it really connects with a lot of broader narratives,
Okay.
the ones that demonize certain groups to justify mistreatment, to maintain control.
It reminds me of how history is written, like whoever's in power, they get to control the narrative. It makes me think, are there other Yakub-like figures throughout history?
Oh, absolutely.
People using their power, their influence,
Yeah.
to rig the system,
You see it all the time.
benefiting themselves at the expense of others. I mean, that's one of the things that's so interesting about Yakub's story. It's like a lens to examine, not just the Nation of Islam, but human behavior as a whole.
Exactly.
Like, it forces us to question those stories we've been told,
Yeah.
look for other perspectives. And this brings us back to that whole idea of responsibility.
It comes back to that.
If creation, whether it's scientific or artistic or even social, can have these unintended consequences,
Yeah.
then doesn't that mean those in power, those who can create, they have a moral obligation to think about the impact of their actions?
It's a crucial point. You can't just create something and walk away.
Right.
Whether it's a new invention, a work of art, a business plan.
Or even just the way we interact with other people.
Exactly. We have to be mindful of the consequences, the good and the bad.
So it's not just about, like, trying to avoid doing harm. It's also about using that creative energy to actually do some good in the world.
That's it. We can learn from Yakub's story, see it as a cautionary tale, but it can also be this, like, call to action, reminding us we have a choice in what we create.
I like that. We have a choice, and we can strive for something better. It's like we're not just inheriting the world as it is. We can actually shape it.
We have that opportunity, maybe even the obligation.
So it sounds like what you're saying is Yakub's story isn't just about this one mythical guy. It's bigger than that. It's about the power of narratives,
Right.
the responsibility of creators,
Hmm.
and ultimately the choices we make that shape the world around us.
Yeah, exactly. We're all part of a larger story,
Yeah.
and we can influence how it unfolds.
Okay, so we've talked about the theology, the philosophy of Yakub's story, but now I'm thinking, how do we actually, like, put all this into practice? How do we ensure the things we're putting out into the world, that they're contributing to something good?
Well, that's a question we can explore a little more in the last part of our deep dive. But I think a good starting point is awareness,
Okay, awareness.
recognizing the power of those narratives, and being aware of the unintended consequences our actions can have. I think that's how we become more conscious creators,
More conscious creators.
more responsible citizens of the world.
Okay, so we've really gone deep with this whole story of Yakub.
Mm.
The myth, the theology, the philosophy. It's like a lot to think about.
It is.
And now I'm wondering, okay, so what? Like, how does any of this actually apply to, like, our lives?
Right,
you
yeah,
know?
that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
We can sit here and think about all these big ideas all day long, but then what? How do we take action?
Exactly.
And I think, as we've been talking about Yakub's story, it's really all about this power of creation
Okay.
and the responsibility that comes with it.
The responsibility.
Yeah, like, what are the consequences of our actions?
Both the good and the bad.
Exactly. And maybe even those consequences we don't intend.
Right. So are you saying, like, are we all kind of like mini Yakubs in a way?
Maybe.
I mean, we're all creating things all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like a piece of art or like a business plan or even just how we shape our little corner of the world.
Yeah. We all have that ability to create, to shape things around us.
Okay, but that's kind of like overwhelming to think about.
So,
Like every little choice we make, it has all these consequences, right?
right.
How are we supposed to keep track of the ripple effects of everything we do?
It is a lot. But I think maybe it starts with being intentional,
Intentional, okay.
Like, before you go and create something, whether it's a painting, a new system at work, whatever,
Yeah.
take a second and just ask yourself, what's the purpose here?
What am I trying to do?
Yeah, what impact do I want this to have?
Okay.
Am I willing to own up to the consequences, both the good and the bad?
I see, yeah. So it's not just about trying to avoid doing harm. It's also about actively trying to do good.
Absolutely. We've talked about how Yakub's story can be seen as a cautionary tale.
Right, because his creation was intentionally flawed.
Yeah. But it can also be this, like, inspiring reminder
Oh, okay.
that we can choose what we create and we can actually aim for a better world.
I like that. So it's like we're not just stuck with the world as it is.
Yeah.
We can be a part of making it better.
Exactly. We have this amazing opportunity and maybe even a responsibility, you know?
To shape the world in a positive way.
It's like we're not just sitting on the sidelines, we're in the game. We're active participants in this whole human story.
That's a good way to put it. So I guess Yakub's real legacy isn't just about the details of his story. It's about these bigger questions it brings up. About creation itself and what it means to be a creator.
Absolutely. It's about the choices we make and how those choices ripple out and affect the world.
So there you have it, everyone. We've gone deep into the myth of Yakub.
Deeping.
We talked about the theology, the philosophy,
All the big questions.
and what this story might mean for us today,
As we try to make our way in the world.
Exactly. And hopefully this deep dive has gotten your wheels turning
Yeah, maybe spark some new ideas.
and helped you see the power of narratives,
And the power we all have to make things better.
So keep exploring these questions. Find your own way to make a positive impact.
Because, like we saw with Yakub, the ability to create, it's a powerful thing.
It is. And it's up to all of us to use it wisely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
See you next time.